password secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Our Take is our web show. Say hi. What's your number one program that you want to take care of?
First thing we got to do, we got to get the economy back on track. Inflation under control. We can't be having $4 gasoline. We can't be having groceries unaffordable. We got to get the economy working for all Montana together.
Dana White, 45, soon to be 47, President-elect Donald Trump.
He did the Trump dance. He did the Trump dance.
Also signing an executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo.
A perfect landing, and of course you landed directly on episode number 109 of Just Our Take. I'm your host John, and it looks like, for now at least, I am solo tonight. How's everybody doing? Hope you're well. I'm going to do my very best tonight. Oh, that's not good at all. How about we go there we go. Tonight we've got a show. We're going to talk about the first 100 days. Hopefully you guys have seen some of the news on that. Trump was out there touting the first 100 days. He did a rally yesterday. He had a great meeting in the Oval today, or I should say in the conference room today, where he had all of his staff there, all of the department heads, if you will. And they each went through what's happened with them in the first 100 days. J.D. Vance gave just a blistering speech from the conference room, and I'll be playing that here pretty soon. Hello, Marie. Producer Marie, thank you so much for being here tonight. Looks like it's just me and you. Anyway, I did talk to El. He is on his way. David, as we previously talked about, he is on a trip out of state. He will not be joining us tonight. Anyway, so yeah, the first 100 days, we're also going to be talking about the massive blackout that hit Europe. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to catch that. The news was eerily quiet on that. It happened at about 6:30 Eastern time, and we didn't see any news on it over here until, gosh, probably 5 hours later, and then it started trickling out. And I think that they just didn't have an opportunity to get to it, I'm sure. Hello, Alice. It is a beautiful evening here in Montana so far. So glad you're here. Thanks for joining us rather than sitting outside and enjoying that amazing weather that we're having. We're supposed to get hot here, by the way. I think Friday, Saturday, we're going to be in the very high 70s. So for us this time of year, that's really something. I'm going to jump right into it because I want to share a couple things with you. We're going to talk about the first 100 days first. And here was Greg Gutfield doing his best at some comedy as he's talking about some of the things that happened on the first 100 days.
Today marks Donald Trump's first 100 days in office. Fair enough. But in reality, 100 is an arbitrary number, kind of like the age of consent for Hunter Biden or Kamala's blood alcohol content. But with Trump, 100 feels like 1,000. So many moves, and many are big. This March saw the lowest monthly number of border encounters on record. Violent illegals who roamed the streets under Biden are being removed at record speed. Only 9 illegals have been discharged into the country, but they were released into the audience for Fox and Friends and quickly self-deported. Trump downsized federal government with DOGE, saving $160 billion in the process. It's far from enough, but at this rate, $1.6 billion a day, we might avoid economic ruin. He crushed DEI, took men out of women's sports, returned plastic straws to our waiting mouths, unleashed domestic energy production, and made showers great again. Not that some Democrats actually use them.
Damn.
But when Trump says he'll do something, he does it at breakneck speed. How do you explain this? Well, all Trump did is match the pace of politics to the accelerating change of technology. And Trump 2.0 is changing the speed of politics. So much so, it's like replacing a carrier pigeon with a 5G iPhone. Or replacing Jesse Waters with someone who had their GED. So as policies move faster than a prune Danish through Joe Biden's digestive tract, other things will take time, like tariffs. But where's the media's hysterics now that the stock market's returned to near normal in mere days? I get it, because while Trump's rolling, Dems are polling at record lows, coming in just above poison ivy and just below anal fissures. So they resort to aping the past with no solutions for the future. On Sunday, Dem leaders sat on the Capitol steps spewing verbal diarrhea for 12 hours. They were so sad even pigeons wouldn't on them. Cory Booker emphasized moral urgency. Well, if it's so urgent, Cory, why are you the one killing the most time? I've seen homeless guys get more crap done. On one hand, he tells us the sky's falling. On the other, he's seeing how long he can go without peeing. But today, Dems are too impaired by anger and self-driven theatrics to see clearly. They're chasing the romance of resistance, embracing losing issues like the Maryland dad, as if Ward Cleaver also punched June in the face. Thanks. No wonder the corrupt media, our neutral observers, have hit Trump with a 92% negative coverage. So what's going on here? Well, Trump's revealed the true battle. It's between the ins and the outs, the self-obsessed versus the selfless. Every morning, Trump wakes up to life as an adventure. What can I do today? What dragon can I slay? Meanwhile, the aging Dems still cling to identity politics. They've become consumed by the self and left the world behind. Trump, however, has no time for who he is. It's what he does that matters. He's productive, not resentful. The future is his. The past is dead. Modern leftism is the reverse. It no longer seeks meaning in the outside world. It's now who you are, not what you do, which leads to nothing but disaster. Look at the border, crime, biology. The obsession with self replaced the pursuit of solutions. Meanwhile, the solution to the Dems' problem is right in front of them. It's Trump. He's showing you the way forward, and it is forward. You need to stop looking backward, obsessing over past depressions while mimicking dead radicals. You need to look up and out. There's a world out there that dwarfs whatever you think your pronoun is. Right now, the Dems are looking backward and inward. No future, no adventure, just the past and the sad self. So today serves as a moment of reflection. 100 days can be a transformative period, but only if you're tired of living in the past and living in your own head.
And there you have it. You're right. Gutfield does always bring the goods. He's funny as all get out, and always good for the show. But you know, inside all that comedy, there's an awful lot of news. And you know, if you look at the last 100 days, look how much has actually been done in spite of all of the roadblocks they're putting up. Some of the things that look like we're hitting roadblocks and hitting really a dead end, like we're not getting anywhere. I know that we've been frustrated. We've been continually frustrated by these judges getting in the way. But I think what's happening is the judges are, to use a term, self-deporting. They're outing themselves as the corrupt judges that they are, and allowing the Trump team to go in and actually take care of them, and get them out of the judiciary. I think that is, as frustrating as it is that they keep on getting in the way, they keep on putting up these roadblocks for us. I think that you're going to find, in the end, it's going to be a much better judiciary when it all comes down to it. Something else that Trump's done, again, Trump is the master troller. Oh, I've got to remove this one. See, David's usually here to help me with this. We have the master troller, and that is Donald Trump. He put these signs up in front of the White House. These are all of the arrested, not all of them, these are many of the arrested illegals and what their crimes were. Now, this is exactly where the media would stand, with the White House in the background when they're doing their morning hits, for their live hits for the news programs that they're on. And what you found is some of these news media have actually blurred out the images. That's I mean, I don't get it. Why? So you're going to blur out the images. It's only going to make people decide, well, what are they hiding from me? Again, Trump is just the master troller here. He's trolled all of the media. You don't want to report on what's really going on. He's going to make you report on what's going on, or you're going to find a different backdrop. I think it's great. Good stuff there. Here is another video on, we showed you what Gutfield's take on it. Well, what have the Dems done in the first 100 days?
Democrats done anything in 100 days? I can't think of anything other than whine and sing horribly.
Yes. The 100 days to the Democrats is like a complete fiction of the rest of our 100 days. So let's take the example that you just talked about, where you talked about an administrative error that needs to sort of correct someone's process, and I assume you are meaning due process. But this person was someone who was already deported and then came back against, he was a recidivist, illegal enterer in the country. And what I don't understand is the sort of wiping the slate clean that the Dems do when they are blurring out the signs on the White House and levying this guy, lifting him up as the Maryland father. I don't quite understand why it's as if their memory has only started from like 2 seconds in, so the conversation is just administrative. But the point was that this guy was a wife-beating, violent, gang-affiliated asshole that kept coming into our country multiple times. It should have stopped then. But here's the point about the 100 days. So we know that there's 92% illegal or negative coverage of the president. 100% negative coverage, by the way, of some of his administrative, other people in the administration, like the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
What is that? But if you dig into that, it was the lion's share of coverage was about Trump. So only a small portion was Biden, mostly positive, vast majority all Trump, totally negative. But here are the stats that matter. 96% of Trump voters are glad they did. They know it was the right thing to do. 86% know that his economic policies will make us stronger. Half of those say, yep, it's going to be a little rocky, the rocky part we went through, but we know it's going to make us stronger. So the media to the left, hair on fire, their 100 days is everything's blowing up. We tried constitutional crisis. We tried everything. Now we're going to try impeachment since the lawfare didn't work, since illegal voting didn't work. That's where they are now. But the rest of the Americans are glad they are on this ship that has finally been righted thanks to President Trump.
Exactly. And what we're finding is there's more and more of the media just coming out and flat out lying. On this 100 days, all of the media came out and said this is the lowest rating of any president in the last 5 presidents. The lowest rating for the first 100 days. But we know that's not true because we've been following the polling, and even CNN has been forced on many occasions to say that a majority, literally a majority of the country, believes that we're on the right track. Not only, to your point, Marie, they voted them in. That's right. The majority voted him in, and more than the majority now are happy that they voted him in. So when they come out and they tell us that he's only got a 44% approval rating, it's just not true. Again, even CNN has said that I believe that number was close to 72%, that the country is on the right track, which directly reflects on his work and what he's doing. I'm going to toss you over here to this one. JD Vance came out and just scorched the earth in the cabinet meeting today.
Mr. President, thank you, and thanks to the cabinet. So, at the risk of insulting everybody else at the table, I believe that I am the youngest member sitting at the table. And, it occurred to me that from the time that I was born to the time that Donald J. Trump was inaugurated just a few months ago, we went from, again, 40 years, we went from the world's manufacturing superpower to one in which we depend on the People's Republic of China to make the things that we need. We went from the proudest military in the world to one in which we failed to meet our recruiting goals. And we went from one in which bipartisan border policy was the consensus of both Democrats and Republicans to one in which we allowed 20 million people to run roughshod illegally over the countryside, causing crime, causing a stress in the welfare system. And again, that happened over the lifetime of the youngest member of the cabinet. And what has happened in 100 days is that we've started to reverse every single one of those negative trends. And I think what it shows to me is that the president, and you sit in the Oval Office and you see these portraits of presidents past. And let's be honest, most of them have been placeholders. They've been people who've allowed their staff to sign executive orders with an auto pen instead of men of action. And the reason the media attacks this administration as chaotic is because the president is solving the problems the American people set about to solve. He's actually doing the things that he promised that he would do. And Mr. President, it's been an honor to be part of it for the past 100 days. And let me just make one other observation because it's interesting. I've seen the data, I've monitored it, I've looked at it, but the most underreported fact of the first 100 days is that we came in with a massive recruitment shortfall. And in 100 days of Secretary Hegseth and President Trump's leadership, we now have people breaking down the doors to join our military. To the media assembled here, it's a really interesting question. Why has that happened? Completely aside from the fact that I think it's a good thing or I think that President Trump deserves political credit for it, why did we go from a military where people didn't want to serve to now all of a sudden they do want to serve? That's a story you guys should cover, but compared to that, how much time have you instead focused on the fact that we deported an MS-13 gang member with a valid deportation order? And why is it that the press is so focused on the fake BS rather than what's really going on in the country? I think that what we've shown, sir, is that you can do a lot. You can do a lot in 100 days, but you've also unfortunately revealed that too much of the American media hasn't learned the lessons of the past 40 years. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And like I said, he comes right out and spills it right there in front of the press and says, you guys need to be reporting on this. And what has changed since Donald Trump came in, besides the fact that he is a leader that truly loves, and it shows, truly loves our military and grabs an entire staff of people that truly love our military. But what else has he done? He removed the ridiculous DEI programs that are in the military. He's saying no longer we're going to be doing these things. He came back and said that the military was wrong for forcing an untested medical procedure on people. I'm being careful here. I know we still have to be careful. Can you imagine that? We would lose one of our channels if I come right out and say what I really want to say. But so yeah, they removed that. Not only did they say that the military was wrong for doing it, they said if you were wrongfully discharged for that, you can come back and get your back pay. I met a gentleman the other day who was discharged because he refused to take that medical procedure. And he's glad that he did refuse it. That said, he is now debating whether he's going to take the back pay or not. So that's an interesting thing. We've got Elle on stage now. Hey, Elle, welcome aboard.
Hey, John. How are you?
We're just talking about the first 100 days, and what we were going through just now was JD Vance kind of blistered the earth in the cabinet meeting today, talking about the media is just not giving us any coverage whatsoever about the gigantic turnaround in the military. And I was just going through some of my reasons why I think that is. And first of all, we talked about they've gotten rid of the DEI program, and that's no longer acceptable. The transgenders in the military and the gender affirming care in the military, those do nothing to increase our lethality, which Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, has said that is the number one and only mission, is to increase our military's lethality, because they are a, quote, war-fighting machine. As both veterans, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. All I remember from my years of service was our unity was our strength, right? Us coming together from different backgrounds, but being part of a unit with a common mission and common goal. I mean, that's the whole attraction to the military, right? Is that you remove the individual and you become part of this family, part of this ethos of this warrior mentality. And to me, I never understood the DEI mentality. It was the complete opposite. In the Marine Corps, we had we still do. We have this whole concept of, hey, we're all one color. We're all green. That's it. We're all Marines.
Yep.
There's no Joe or Jeff or Mary or no. You're a Marine, period. And I agree with JD Vance that the media is not covering it, but you don't have record recruitment. You don't have somebody at a military, every service meeting their annual quotas on the 5th month of the calendar year. That doesn't happen. So,
right.
so the administration is definitely talking to the American public that gets it. And I hate to say this, but the mass media, the legacy media, they don't represent the American values and the American people. They really don't. They speak for themselves or somebody else, or else you wouldn't have. I mean, it's awesome to see our numbers. I'm excited. I mean, look, I'm in my mid 50s. I wish I could go back in. That's how excited I am for this administration. I would love to be a 18-year-old kid and having an opportunity to serve under such support from the leadership and setting such a high standard, right? You have to step up. And that's what the military taught me, is that at some point you're going to find out that you can achieve certain things that you didn't think were possible. And that's part of it.
Right.
That's part of the ethos of being in the
I was
military.
fortunate enough I was fortunate enough to serve under Ronald Reagan after serving under Jimmy Carter. And the difference was probably like what we're going through right now. Maybe it was worse now, actually. Biden was definitely worse to our military. And the really sad part was Jimmy Carter was a veteran. He was in the Navy and he served honorably, but it's as if he forgot his oath of office and his position as commander in chief, because he sure did not take care of the military. Ronald Reagan came in and it was an entirely different military.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I served under Clinton years, but he stayed away from the military. He let the military be the military. And I have nothing but praise of all of my leaders that I served under. The utmost respect for not only the enlisted leadership that I was under, but also our captains, our commanders, our COs, just incredible professionalism. I think those were the folks that were probably joined the service in the late 80s, and I got the pleasure of, learning from them. I went in 93. So I'll give you a good example. My CEO, fantastic gentleman, he was an enlisted Marine all the way up to the rank of gunnery sergeant. So that doesn't happen that's very tough to do, right? You go into enlisted in the Marine Corps. Mind you, for our audience, the Marine Corps is the smallest service. It's very difficult to get promoted. There's not a lot of ranks. There's not a lot of open jobs. This was back in the 90s. He went in to officer school, candidate school, to become an officer as a gunnery sergeant. So then what we call those in the military are Mustangs. So then he earned his officer ranks, and then he became RCO, a captain. But I mean, this is a gentleman who had the captain rank, but probably had the knowledge and experience of a lieutenant colonel.
Wow.
So he just knew how to connect with everybody in the unit, whether you were a private first class or you were a 20-year first sergeant. He just knew how. And to me, that's what I remember of the service. They set an expectation, kind of like what Pete's doing, right? Pete's saying, hey, the military has a certain expectation of you, and you need to meet it. And that's has carried me in my private career from day one, and it has helped me whenever I'm in tech. It's very challenging in tech. You have a lot of moving parts. You're trying to answer questions for multiple business units. Company might not be doing so well. Then you have to know your own tech. So having a military background for me is fantastic to be in tech, because I know that we can accomplish things that traditionally somebody probably would just give up. So yeah, I think it's fantastic to see the just the different leaderships from JD, from our VP down to Pete, down to what they're doing with regards to the expectation of not just the rank and file, but also the leaders. That's very
What's even
important.
bigger,
And I think it has
what's
been
even
lost.
bigger though is having a strong military enables us to negotiate from a point of strength. And
Yes.
Donald Trump he is the master negotiator, but in order to be the master negotiator, you have to have all the tools. And again, having a stronger military helps us do that. I'm fact checking you on one thing. Space Force is the smallest military, and if you can, and they only have 8,000 units. But you and I probably don't really call the Coast Guard a member of the military. No offense to all the Coasties out there. Well, yeah, offense to the Coasties. They only have 42,000. So of the real military, Navy, Air Force, Marines, yes, the Marines was the smallest of the three of those. I just didn't want anybody coming back and say, hey, you guys are not accurate. Well, yes, we are.
Yeah, when I served, the reserve and the active duty combined, we were only 172,000. That's not a big, compared to. I mean, if you look at the Navy and the Army, which are truly our backbone of our military, every service they have their own special mission, and I mean, I have respect for everybody who serves, because you're basically saying, hey, I'm giving up my individual rights in defense of our nation and defense of our Constitution. And to me, if you wore that uniform, hopefully that's the reason why you serve, is to protect the Constitution and our way of life. It's incredible. And so, yeah, to see the leadership. Look, I didn't care for General Milley talking about, I got to question my whiteness. I'm sorry, what? What?
The biggest disappointment for me, we can come up with this on a future show, but Mad Dog Mattis, that guy, he's really not the guy that the media and that the folklore made him out to be. He may have been a bad, Marine, but in the end, once he got up into the political end of it, he was as lefty as Obama. And that's saying a lot. Hey, I want to shift gears here just a little bit, because there's something. No, that's something that We kind of dodged a bullet too, and we'd be remiss if we celebrate the first 100 days and don't at least address what could have been. And so this is from a show on Tucker Carlson. Thought I would just throw this one out here real quick for you.
During the Biden administration, Biden nominated somebody for control of currency who was ultimately not approved. The Republicans in the Senate killed the nomination. Before she was nominated, 3 weeks before, she wrote an article in the Vanderbilt Law Review that said the great thing about central bank digital currency, in other words, an all digital currency system, is you have the perfect tool to deal with inflation. If inflation gets out of hand, you just freeze everybody's bank accounts.
Nice.
Right.
So that's what they were going to do. It was not just a what if. That was planned, and that was going to be ushered in during the quote Harris administration. Was a digital bank central currency, and they had it ready to go. I mean, they were within the starting blocks of that thing going. And one thing that Donald Trump said in his campaign was, "We will never have a central bank digital currency. We will always run on the dollar standard." But missed it by that much. Can you imagine?
Yeah, well, you just have to look at Spain this week, right? In Portugal. What happened there?
We're going to come to that because I've got some really interesting theories, and I want to hear yours too. But I want to finish on the 100
so
days.
to your point, yeah. Coming back to your point, yeah. I mean, talk about dodging a bullet, and it's frightening to know that literally within a generation we could lose our way of life, and people need to realize that there's always nefarious people. Our nation is so powerful. Our military, we're just talking about, is so powerful. America will never be defeated by another military coming into our fray. They never will. That's impossible, right? You just look at all of the firepower that we have. It's within. You have to worry about the people within the government who do not uphold the law and tell you what they're going to do. All these people, they said what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, call it a Freudian slip. He said, "Hey, we put together the best cheating group together." I'm obviously misquoting, but that line that he said. He told us what they did. Yeah, and
he did.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Roger. You have to have. I call that. And I think I'm talking about Roger's post there. Better keep some cash handy. I'm not saying go crazy and cash all your savings, but you should have a portfolio, and you should have a diverse portfolio. That's all I'm saying. I have a financial advisor, and we have just different vehicles in our portfolio. So much so, I'm going to just throw this little side in there. When everybody was panicking with the tariffs a couple of weeks ago, I talked to my financial advisor because we had a plan 2 years ago. We talked about, if Trump does come into power, there might be an opportunity for us to, buy some of these company stock that we can hold on to for the next 10 years. And so there was a dip, and guess what? I'm not going to touch that money until I retire, which is 10 years from now. But we took advantage of that, and that's because we planned. I've been with my financial advisor for 13 years, and I think we just need to use common sense. That's it.
Roger also says the largest army in the world are the American hunters. And what's really interesting is the first Special Forces unit was a group called the Devil's Brigade, and they were made up of Montana hunters, ranchers, forestrymen, and Canadian Army. And that was the first Special Forces, and they knew how to get things done like no one else. And they had special tactics, and they used their weapons differently than the military did at the time. It's quite an honor to both Canadian and U.S. Companionship, if you will, that they brought that off. So, not even a little bit. And the thing is,
back to your point, we dodged the bullet. Just to close out the conversation, we definitely did.
But it's also the number of guns in America, and the people that actually constantly train with those. There's a lot of people that just have guns and they just keep them because, but there's a lot of people that train with their guns. And I'm not saying that they're out there being paramilitary or militias or anything like that, but they go out and they practice. You know, if you threw a whole bunch of guys over here that didn't, the big difference, and here's if you go back and Gulf War One was, I was deeply involved in planning and mission expertise on that. And one thing that happened was we thought the elite Republican Guard of Saddam Hussein's army was going to put up a really monstrous fight. And what they did was they surrendered. They surrendered quickly. And why did they surrender quickly? Because they didn't really like the country that they were fighting for, and they didn't like the leadership of the country they were fighting for. They surrendered because they didn't have it in them. That won't happen here. If anyone comes over here and they think that they're going to take our U.S. land, you know, if you remember 9/12 of 01, we were all Americans. And we're we stand together to defend this country. If someone came here and tried to take our land, we would do the same thing again.
Especially us Gen Xers. We, you know, I grew up with Red Dawn. I grew up in the 80s, being extremely proud to be an American and seeing all of that this nation gave my family and my friends. And look, we had humble beginnings, right? I'm not saying I'm this big successful guy, but we definitely are extremely thankful for the opportunities that this country gave us. And one of the things that I'm excited about, you know, after these 100 years is moving the education back to the States, because I think that the closer you are to our students, the more focus will be on educating our kids in understanding what does it mean, the privilege of being an American citizen. It's unlike anything else in the history of mankind. And they need to know that, because if it was anybody else, you look at any other country around the world, if any of those leaders had the power that we do, you just have to look at history, right? You look at Napoleon, you look at all of these other leaders that went crazy with thirst and power, and they killed a lot of people. You know, you just look at communism. You know, last 100 years, we lost over 150 million. Mao is a good example of the guys over in Russia. I mean, it's, you know, we've had such a long period of peacetime that I think people have forgotten the sacrifices that many men and women of our country have done to keep us safe. And we need to keep our government in check, meaning that we have to vote. We have to get to know our local politicians. I've talked about this before. I call my senators. I call my congressmen. Yeah. Not to harass them, but I ask them, hey, what do you think about this bill? How are you voting for this? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, you're in my district? Yes. I'm an educated person. I like to know, what are your thoughts? And all of a sudden, the discussion changes, because now they know that there are folks, and that's us, right? This is the government of the people, for the people, by the people. If we don't get involved, that's when all of this crud that Doge has found, right? That's where all the corruption and people think that that we're there for them. No, the government is there to serve us, and a lot of that corruption.
I'm gonna jump back for just a second.
Sorry, go ahead.
I can't let you get away with saying, especially Gen X. Let me tell you, there's a lot of boomers, and I'm speaking for myself and Roger, among others, but there's a lot of boomers that still can aim. We can still get on target. We can still get downrange. And let me tell you, we have fewer years ahead of us than Gen Xers. So we have that I don't give a flip attitude. Put me up front.
Yeah.
But
sounds good, John. But let me quote my best friend. She's a mom of 3. She's my best friend is 55, and I'm going to quote her. She told me the other day, we had this little chat, because she was telling her sons about what they should be telling their friends. They said, hey, my mom is a rabid Gen Xer mom. You do not want to mess with her. So if you come around with my pronouns are, she's going to slap you around the face and walk you straight to your home.
And those of us boomers are going to say, yeah, whatever, time to go back to your. Anyway, so I just want to tell you the one interesting thing, though, that came out of some of the polling. There's some interesting polling, and it's going to come back to this. When they break it down by age group, some of the older folks, some of the boomers, they're anti-Trump, and they're very anti-Trump because of the tariffs, and they feel as if Social Security is going to get taken away from them. The Gen Xers and earlier are very much on board with what's happening as a majority. Not all of them. Again, I'm not saying that 100%, but the vast majority. And what's the difference there? The news media or the new media is more on the tech side. Your X, your Gateway Pundit, those other areas that you can get to only online, as opposed to sitting your butt in front of the television and watching Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki. By the way, Jen is taking over most of the shifts that Rachel Madcow used to have. Watching Fox News, even. By the way, Fox News, Trump called out Fox News for a fake poll. And so all of those things, if you're sitting in front of a television, you're more likely to be doing that as an older person. If you're a younger person, save for people like me and you are, I grew up in tech. I was a tech guy from the beginning. I was on the internet before it was the internet, although I didn't invent the internet. I did not, I promise you, but I was on it before it was the internet. So I've always been very tech savvy, and I get my news, as you guys know, and we distribute our news, right? We're new media here on Just Our Take.
Yes.
So those things, if you look at who's the most afraid, it's the older folks, and they're going anti-Trump, which has never been the case before. They've always been leaning more Republican. They're not this time. And again, it's all about technology.
Yeah, it's funny. As soon as you mentioned that, what came to my mind was, if you look at the beginning of the turn of the century, 20 years ago, which is, we're talking about the boomers who've been retired now for a while, right? These guys probably remember the lockbox. I'm going to put this lockbox over here to the side. They are accustomed that somebody's selling them a bag of goods, right?
That's right.
To your point, my in-laws, they're in that same group, boomers, and they watch the news every day. Clockwork. They don't get their news from anywhere. My mother-in-law, actually, she enjoys conversing with me because she goes, now that I've gotten to hear your side of the story, Elio, it's interesting because I get a different perspective from what I hear every day on the news. Where my father-in-law, he's all he whatever the news tells him, it's gospel. And it's sad. It's sad that people have been conditioned to think that way, where my mother-in-law's like, a good example, I was telling her about Elon Musk and how he was this great entrepreneur. This guy was a scientist. He was working on his PhD and thought, you know what, I can always go back to do that. He left PhD. He was a candidate for his PhD to work on one of his tech companies. I mean, brilliant guy. She said, I never knew that. And I go, no, all you know is this, the little 30-second clip that the news tells you about somebody that you should hate or like or whatever. And unfortunately, the boomers are in that group. The majority of them, they grew up with having a little radio, right? Or the news, or having, Cronkite giving them the news. So you'll never be able to change that. I mean, it is what it is. Also, you look at the MAGA movement, right? You look at 70 million plus of us who voted for President Trump. Okay, I remember in 2015 when he was coming down the stairs, and I was jumping for joy, right? My wife was even like, really, Trump? People didn't do their homework.
Right.
And now you look at 2024, 77 million folks felt like me and said, that's the guy who we need to get into office. So you got to give some. Nobody's perfect. I think we were definitely heading on that cliff, to your point about what the government was doing. I mean, I don't know if you saw the cabinet meeting, but Marco Rubio dropped some golden nuggets there, and he said,
Yeah.
about this dossier that was available for some of the people in the room that the State Department had for misinformation, and how they had this whole mechanism where they were trying to shut people down completely. I mean, that's hardcore communism. If you were a boomer and you didn't listen to that, then you missed out that we literally had Russian communists in our country for the last 4 years.
Well, even worse than that. I don't, maybe not worse than that, but even, if you look at what's really happening, they just came out recently that over on, I can't even say it, on another very large social media platform, they had ceded the censorship programming to communist China.
Right.
Not that they were asking
Correct.
for help, not that they actually said, here you go, communist China, you take over our censorship, you tell us what we can and can't say. And they had actually given control of the censorship apparatus to communist China. I know it's hard to believe, but it's just come out and it's true, and it's not looking good. I want to transition, otherwise we're never going to get to it. And you'd already alluded to it.
Sure. Sorry.
No, we're having a great conversation. It's always fun. Let me fix this a little bit here. So there was a mass blackout in Spain, Portugal, parts of France. There was actually in Germany, parts of the UK. I'm going to play the little video here because I can. People just stuck.
Okay.
So there's a whole bunch of videos out there about what happened, but ultimately all of the rail system went down. You couldn't pay at the pump because the electricity was down. A good portion of the internet went down because the server farms went down. The subways went down and they had to walk on the subway tracks to get to where they were going. Some people, like these folks here, they could have been 50, 80, 100 miles away from their destination, and they had to wait or find a place to stay. It was an absolute unbelievable event. The thing that really gets me is these people, you said it earlier, and I didn't want to jump on it because it would have kind of spoiled the whole cookie here. But they always tell us what they're going to do, right? They always tell us what they're going to do in advance. And would you believe they told us that they were going to do this? Let me show
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
I said, would you believe that they told us in advance that they were going to do this? Here we are. Exactly 1 month ago, the EU asked citizens to prepare a 72-hour survival kit. 4 weeks later, the largest blackout in history occurred, affecting Spain, Portugal, Italy, France, and Germany. Curious coincidence, isn't it? Do they still think we're idiots? I mean, and I don't think there's a video for that, but 72-hour crisis kit. They told you. The other thing is that Klaus Schwab, before he took his early retirement, he came out and said there most definitely will be a catastrophic cyber pandemic. Interesting that they called it that, a cyber pandemic that will certainly cause power outages widespread. Now, what's really interesting, I believe that they thought that they were going to get us to go down too. There was a document that came out that said we were covered by the black eye. We're covered by the black eye. Now, what's the black eye? Well, we'll talk about that on Sunday because there's a lot more to it. But I just want your take on what happened in Europe and what do you think the fallout is? Why did it happen? I know what the news is trying to tell us, but what's your take on it?
Well, I think this is a test. I don't know if you heard recently, the leaders in England said that they want to black out the sun for the climate. So I still believe that the WEF and all of these globalist, people are trying to influence Western civilization. And I'm telling you, you called it earlier. Thank God. Thank God President Trump was elected. My take on it is it's probably worse than what they covered. They didn't do a lot of cover. You had to look for these news. You had to look for them. It was a 10-hour, I think Portugal was 10 hours. Portugal is a first world country. When was the last time you heard of a full country, not just a city, a country went blackout for 10 hours? Right? There was a lot of things that could have happened. Just imagine. So my take on it is it was probably a test for something bigger that's coming. People better wake up in Europe if these folks are not done. I think the people that ran COVID are not done, and they might be desperate, but they're trying different things to disrupt our way of life.
So for the folks at home, just a little bit of inside baseball on the Just Our Take show. We have Elle, David, and myself. We have our own little signal group where we always shoot each other news articles, probably several times a day. And Elle and I usually get up really early because I see his posts early, and he'll see mine early. David is an hour different from us, but he's up there pretty early too. We hadn't heard anything at all. David was flying out and he was at the airport, and he said, "Did you see this massive power outage?" And I said, "Where are you seeing that?" And I said, "I haven't seen anything." And David said, "It's all over X." Well, both at the same time, Elle and I both text back, "I'm not seeing anything on X," right?
Right. Yeah, that's correct.
And it wasn't for a couple hours before we started seeing widespread media coverage. When I say media, I know that Elle is the same as me. We don't watch the standard news. We look to alternative news online. And it took a long time for them to finally get that news out to us.
Yeah, and mind you, it's right, they're ahead of us by 8 hours at minimum. Spain and Portugal. It was bigger than what the media was saying. I wonder what the EU was doing. Let's see. Marie says, "My brother flew out at Lisbon 55 minutes before all went down. He was pretty thankful to have missed that." Yeah,
I bet.
I can't imagine. Now imagine that happening here. People still take the train. Imagine that. I lived in Texas for 18 years, and I can tell you it's April. It's already in the high 80s, low 90s there.
Yep.
I can't imagine being stuck in the middle of somewhere with that temperature. I mean, you're talking about putting people at risk at mass. So, yeah, unfortunately, I think it was a test for something bigger, and people need to pay attention. That's my take.
So
they were successful in that test run because they were able to stop not just one country, but multiple countries.
So there's a book that I read a long time ago because I was in the power distribution world for a while. I was a representative for a company that sold lithium batteries, and I'm saying grid scale lithium batteries and grid scale solar panels. And there's a book out there that I read. It's called The Grid, and it talks about when the Eastern Seaboard went down for, was it 3 days?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that all happened. This is the report. It happened because a branch fell across high tension power lines in Canada, and we were tied to their grid. And so it caused this chain reaction effect down all the way through the Eastern Seaboard. And it took them a long time to repair the transformers that blew, the distribution units that blew, as well as find the original source of the problem. It was at that point that they realized there are 4 grids in the United States. No, 3 grids in the United States. There's more now, but at that time there was 3. And as of 10 years ago, there was still only 3. There was the Eastern grid that goes all the way up into Canada.
Mm-hmm.
There was the Western grid that covers the Western United States, west of the Mississippi, all the way up into Canada, and parts of Mexico. And then Texas had their own grid. How about that? So if power were to go out and there was a catastrophic failure on the West, can you imagine everything on the west, not just the coast, the entire western territory going down. And it does take a long time to bring that back up. There are many cascading events that have to happen to bring the power back to those places. So it could take
Yes.
days, if not weeks. Now, one of the things that came out of the power outage in Europe was nobody could use gas stations. Why?
Right.
Because the network was down. Not just the power for the pumps, because some of them had emergency generators, but the network was down. You
Yeah.
couldn't pay at the pump, and most of these places weren't taking cash.
Mhm.
The ATMs were not working. The grocery stores and supply stores sold out of water within 20 minutes. Within 20 minutes. Again, not trying to scare people. We've talked about this before on the show, talked about it a lot. Please just have yourself an emergency supply.
Have a plan. I mean, that's just normal, right? Like I grew up in Southern California where you have a lot of earthquakes, and in the 80s we did have a lot of earthquakes.
Yep.
And we had a plan. And when I met my now beautiful wife of 26 and a half years, she actually had an LA address. She had a kid in the trunk of her car. That was just normal. That's just what you do. You know, you just had a kid. It doesn't have to be anything
Yeah,
expensive.
you should.
Just have a plan of action. Hey, sorry, my brother-in-law used to live north of LA, Castaic. You probably know where that is. But there was a freeway called the 14th that fell down during the Northridge earthquake. So that part of town couldn't make it into work. Anybody from there, I think it was something like 60 or 80,000 people couldn't get to work because that highway was down, and it was down for a good time. The alternative routes were impossible, so he had to be off work, I think, for 6 weeks because they couldn't get into the office. Now, mind you, this is prior to the internet, right? This is Northridge. This is early 90s. So you have to think this is prior to the internet. We all had kids. We all had a plan. Hey, if something happens, here's our rendezvous. That's it. You just got to know. I'm not saying, in the early 2000s, everybody talked about prepping, or the late 90s about the Y2K stuff. I'm not saying go all that out. I'm not saying move out to some silo in some desolate place, but just have common sense. I lived in Texas for 18 years, and every year we have bad weather, especially those folks who lived in Houston. I didn't live in Houston. I lived in Austin area, but people who lived in Houston, and every year people are rushing and dashing to the store when the storm is coming. And I'm like, shouldn't you have that already pre-planned? Why are you waiting till the last minute to do that? So it's just common sense.
That's right.
Common sense.
Well, if you think about it, what happened during COVID, for some reason, everybody decided that's when you need to go hoard toilet paper.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
Going back to the Northridge earthquake, I managed a territory up in the heart of Los Angeles at the time, and the corporate office for the company that I worked for was in upstate New York. And that earthquake happened in the early hours of the morning, Pacific Coast time. And I remember getting calls because I was the only one that they could reach. They were calling me and they said, should we hold our trucks for shipments? And I said, yeah, there are complete freeways gone. The 10 freeway, remember the 10 freeway in the heart of West LA was down.
The 405?
405 had an out. Yeah, I said, you don't send any trucks. And I remember in the middle of the conversation, we had an aftershock. And by the way, you'll know where I lived. I lived in Aliso Viejo. So
you were south of me.
Quite a ways away from the epicenter.
Right.
But I remember feeling an aftershock and watching. So I had 3 cats at the time, and the cats, they were funny, man. They just laid completely flat on the floor before it happened. So they were my early warning system. And that second aftershock took down my bookcase. And I was
Right.
on the phone with our corporate office, and the bookcase comes down. Anyway, so yeah, to the point, you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. You should have some form of preparations for an emergency. Now, that said, most of these people in Europe didn't. And they found out the hard way that they should have had some form of.
Right.
Now, it wouldn't be the Just Our Take show if I didn't have a, hang on a second. Let's do this.
Oh, you got a video?
No, prepping is a new definition. I think most people had plans for emergency. It just wasn't called that. I agree. With
Yeah.
that. There's so the modern prepper believes in end of the world type stuff, right? Nuclear war or something along those lines. That's the modern prepper, or the apocalypse, or the zombie apocalypse for that matter. I didn't even get a smile out of you on that one, Al. So yeah, they do have.
I'm just thinking of just common sense. Like here, I live in a rural state, where 4-wheel drive is a must at some state, in some parts of the year because of weather. That's just common sense, right? It's just like when I lived in Texas, we would have every 3 years there would be a freeze. And we try to avoid the highways because for some reason, people in Texas think that they're in a NASCAR race, and they are literally up your rear bumper while you're driving 85, right? And I don't care how good of a driver you are, black ice, your car's going to slide, or truck. So it's just common sense.
I'm gonna shift gear, not shift. I'm actually going to go back to the story of why the blackout. I think that it was planned. Yeah. And I think that, again, they kind of showed us that they had it planned, but the timing of it's interesting. And I saw a news report. Look at that. Apple has been fined by the EU with a fine of $500 million. So it's actually, it turns out it's closer to $1 billion. It's like 890 something.
Correct.
And it wasn't just Apple. Meta got fined at the same time under the same laws. Well, this fine came down on the 23rd of April, 5 days before the blackout. So was there someone at Apple or someone at Meta that said, really, you want to mess with me that way? Hey, Will, welcome aboard. This is what we can do. Or was it a hacker that said, don't you dare mess with our friends at Apple? I think that there's either way, there's a vulnerability there, whether it was in response to what happened here or not. There's a lot of people that are trying to come up with, it was an instability in a solar farm. No, I'm sorry, that's not how they work.
Right.
An instability at a solar farm would not have caused this. They're also saying that, in the US, we run on 60 hertz. That's the frequency that our electricity works on. In the EU, they work on 50 hertz. Well, they say that it got all the way down to 48.4. And if it had dropped 2 more points, it would have collapsed and done damage to the entire European Union. Again, I don't know that I buy that either.
Yes. And it also shows you the vulnerability of this whole green mentality, right? Oh, we got to be solar, number one. You still have generators that have to generate the electricity for your electric world, people. You're never going to get rid of fossil fuels. But since you've moved a lot of your grid into the so-called green energy place, look what happens when you lose power. Everything is done. Was that the goal? Like I said, I live in a rural part of the country. I have a generator that runs both in propane and in gasoline. I have different forms of energy. People get manipulated. We were just talking about, some of the boomers who just watch the news. So somebody could be a really good salesperson and sell you an idea. Sometimes we got to take a step back and think for ourselves and say, is that the best for me? It's not. Like, I think Teslas are awesome cars, interior wise, beautiful vehicles, right? I personally don't care for an electric car. My choice. Could I afford one of those cars? Yeah, but it's not my thing. So I'm not going to do it just because my neighbor got a Tesla, right? And that's some of the mentality in some of these big cities. They want you to keep up with the Joneses. They want to keep you in the state of debt. They want to keep you in buying stuff that you really don't need. And then you get out of that situation, and that's why I think people should travel, and they should learn from just different ways people live in this world to come up with an idea of what works best for you. We got to think for ourselves.
Unfortunately, it's not as safe to travel as it used to be.
I'm just talking about like within our country. We have 50 little countries, right? 50 states.
True. Let me show you one other thing here. JD Vance was talking about the judiciary and all of this judicial overreach that's been going on, and JD's always good to listen to.
What we're really doing is fixing 40 years of accumulated bogus bureaucratic BS. We're fixing 40 years of judges thinking they rule the country instead of the American people. We're fixing 40 years of judges telling the president what to do instead of the American people telling the president what to do. And that's not going to happen overnight, but I think it had to happen. And thankfully, we're actually getting it done. What we're really doing is fixing 40 years of accumulated.
He is so right. He is 100% correct. I really admired all of the people that President Trump has surrounded himself with in Trump 2.0. And you hear it from people like Stephen Miller, who constantly, daily, he educates the media on American law and the separation of powers. Here you have JD, our awesome vice president, doing the same thing. And yeah, it has been a problem. And it's a shame that even our own so-called conservative party, the leaders have just sat on their laurels. They basically just made themselves fat and happy and rich, but have really allowed this corruption to creep into our country. And you look at the last 40 years, just like what he said. Right?
It's not done yet. Look at this. Outrageous radical judge releases alleged Tesla firebomber from prison, citing suspects' multiple supposed medical needs, including access to gender-affirming care. So we have a transgender who firebombed a Tesla dealership, got sentenced to prison, and now this judge released this person because they needed gender-affirming care, and that's no longer available in the prisons.
Right. And then this is the other problem. If you look at the background of these judges, where did they go to school? A lot of these folks go to these institutions that were supposed to be the bastions of, our constitutional law and all that. I'm talking about schools in the East and in the West. These liberal schools that have really failed to properly educate our judges and our attorneys who are supposed to be representing us. Like, to me, I look at that, you and I look at that and go, what is wrong with people? Well, these folks went to these schools that really brainwashed these folks into thinking that your feelings are above the law. They're not.
Right.
The law is very clear. That's why we have been around for 250 years, because of our laws. You look at all of these, the media laughing at the president for using a 150-year-old law. Guess what? It's relevant because it's the law. It's not about your feelings. And I feel the same way about some of these judges, that they have been brainwashed into thinking that they're above the law and applying the law. They're not. I can't tell you. I did some volunteer work for a police department, and I got to go into some criminal law cases just to observe, and was very disgusted by how arrogant some of these judges are. You think you go into a court and it's supposed to be, the black robe is supposed to be, this whole equality of applying the law equally, not I'm going to apply the law into why I think it's equal. No, Mr. Judge or Mrs. Judge, it's the law has been stated, and if it meets a representation of this part of the law, then that's how you apply it. It's not you get to decide how to apply it.
Well,
that's how our system works.
Right. And if a
Sorry, go
law
ahead.
turns out to be repugnant, then it gets to be overturned. And an example, it's funny, I was listening to a conservative, he's a comedian, but he makes his way onto a lot of these shows. He was on the Gutfeld show and he was talking about the 14th Amendment. And he said that birthright citizenship is in the Constitution. It's in the 14th Amendment. So, Trump needs to stop. He just needs to stop talking about that. And that's just never going to go anywhere. Well, there's an awful lot of constitutional scholars that say that birthright citizenship is a misreading of the 14th Amendment and a bastardization of the 14th Amendment. And so, listen, we can both agree that it is, but it's going before the Supreme Court this summer, and we will get an answer this summer. If we get I'm going to be nice. I'll just drop that. But we should get an answer this summer from the Supreme Court, and that is how our judicial system works. No one's challenged it yet. It's not gone before a full judicial challenge. And by the way, it can also be repealed and rewritten. They can go back.
Correct. It's not the end. It's not the end, right? Yeah,
that's right. They can go back and rewrite that. And I mean, it's a process. It's not easy to do it, and it shouldn't be easy to do it.
Yes.
But if it all comes down to it, that could be overturned as well. So I'm with you. It's not a done deal, and it's not in the Constitution. It is certainly not set in stone. The only thing set in stone were the 10 Commandments. But
right. Well, and you're seeing the result of 40 years, like JD was talking about, of people just turning a blind eye, like almost like I feel like these people perfectly used the guilt of our success against us. Oh, you should be guilty. You should let us think this way because we've had such success. I'm sorry. This country was established, and people who come here the right way and apply themselves can be as successful or as failed as they want to be. Right? Nobody here puts a gun to my head and said, "Hey, go be homeless." Obviously, I'm not talking about the poor homeless people that have mental disabilities, but if I wanted to, I could let my loan and my home go, and I could be out in the street by choice, just like I can apply myself and build the greatest company in the world if I wanted to, or not. That's the choice of this great nation, and people have used that to guilt people into allowing other people to get away with stuff. We're talking about these judges. They've been getting away with a lot of stuff, and nobody's called them on it. My undergrad is in criminal justice, and I talked to one of my professors. Her best friend was Marcia Clark, who was going through the O.J. Simpson trial.
Yeah,
and we covered a lot of the criminal law as that case was going on in real time, and with somebody who had a direct connect to one of the major attorneys that was trying that case. Right. And there were certain things that they couldn't talk about because of the law. And they had to follow a certain steps of the law, even though they felt they could have done other things. That's our country, right? We stick to the law. But we have allowed 40 years of this crud to come into our judicial system. Stephen Miller said it so eloquently. President Trump is the one person that we elect, right? We elect congressmen and senators and the president, but the president is given a special set of privileges and rights as the president, as repelling an invasion. And I believe him. I believe it's an invasion, right? Our previous administration violated their role by allowing all of these folks to come here illegally, and now, saying that they have to have due process. I'm sorry. No. Due
Check this
process
out.
means that you came here illegally. Sorry, you're not supposed to be here. Bye. That's it. That's it.
So Marie just posted this. Amir Ali, a federal judge who was blocking President Trump's 90-day freeze on foreign aid, only became a U.S. citizen 4 months before Biden appointed him as a federal judge.
You see what I
could
mean?
possibly go wrong? I want to show you something else here. This is something that we talked about leading up to Trump picking Kash Patel as the FBI director. We talked about this, and it's finally come true. This is also a photo that we have in our opening of the show. FBI demoted agent's photograph taking a knee for BLM during George Floyd riots. Goodbye.
Right. Well, I'm sorry. You're a federal agent. You're supposed to be neutral politically, right? Because then you're seeing that you're biased towards a party. So why are you kneeling?
Yep.
I think this is fantastic. I think this is the cleansing that we need. I mean, if you want to believe a poll, look at the poll that I believe it was like close to 94% of all of us who voted for Trump are happy with our choice.
Yeah.
Despite the media trying to make
That's
it otherwise. All of us who voted for President Trump are extremely happy. There was this whole, I watched Maria on Fox Business. I watched a couple of minutes of her a few days ago. She was talking about how, they interviewed different people across the country, and everybody was saying, yeah, we were expecting a little rough road ahead because we got to clean up the 4 years of nonsense. Yeah. And so the American public is educated. We all know. We all know that there's got to be some pain before we get to, the promised land that is coming. And it is coming.
I want to show you something that RFK Jr. is doing. It's kind of a beautiful thing.
Do you know what's really in these granola bars you eat all the time? Nature Valley is the #1 selling granola bar in the US. But what is it actually made of? Let's find out. The ingredients are whole grain oats, then 11 grams of added sugar, which is 1 gram more than a Krispy Kreme donut, canola and or sunflower oil, rice flour, honey, salt, baking soda, soy lecithin, an emulsifier, and natural flavor. It does contain bioengineered food ingredients, but doesn't specify which ones. So there you have it. That's everything in Nature Valley granola bars, which is a little bit more than just the oats and honey the box suggests. Do you know what's really in these granola bars you eat all the time? Nature Valley.
How about that?
Yes.
So, and like I said, I think I was on the Sunday show. They're coming through and they're going to remove all the artificial colors and Fruit Loops. You're going to have to get used to eating a little bit bland, colored Fruit Loops. However, guess what? They're still going to taste great. I want to show you something else here. This one is going to blow your mind, but unfortunately, it is on Instagram, so I have to wait for it to come around to pause it because, Instagram.
While you do that,
you need to go back.
Just for our audience who might not have known, the color dyes in our food, it's made out of petroleum. You know what? It's also made out of petroleum? Gasoline. So do you think those dyes really belong in our food? I don't. I think it's disgusting. And I'm so glad for RFK Jr. I know he's gotten a lot of slack, so much so that I think for the first 100 days, they put up a graph the other day on X. I think it was yesterday where they showed RFK had something like 86. Elon had like 94, meaning bad stories about them. And Pete Hegseth had gotten 100% of bad stories about him. And Elon, of course, being the competitive guy, said, "Pete, you beat me." Because he didn't have 100% of bad stories. But talk about manipulation of the media and trying to get you to believe that they want you to believe that what President Trump is doing is bad. It's been done before. You can look it up. Tariffs are fantastic. A unified military.
There were tariffs when Biden had. In fact, some
Right.
of the tariffs Trump didn't even change. He just left the same tariffs that Biden had left.
Well,
So
Biden never canceled Trump's tariffs
that's
because it was bringing in so much money.
or because he couldn't, but we can talk about that another time. I want to show you this video now. This one is going to blow your mind. And like it says, this is crazy. Have you ever seen a cartel cemetery before?
I think I saw this.
I've been to some crazy places before, but this has to be up there as one of the craziest. This is a cemetery. These are all mausoleums dedicated to cartel bosses in Culiacan, Sinaloa. These aren't houses. These are mausoleums, tombs, like the tombs of Egypt for the pharaohs, except these hold the narco kingpins. And each one built larger to one up their competitors. It truly is unbelievable. The amount of money that the cartel makes. They have so much money, they don't even know what to do with it. To the point where they build $1 million mansions to be buried in. Monuments to some of the most evil people that have ever walked the earth. Here in Sinaloa, Mexico. All propped up by a government that's as corrupt as they are.
That's insane.
Can you
That
imagine?
is insane. I don't think people realize how, and that's what I mean about the corrupt and the power hungry, right? You hear our media try to insult us by guilting us and saying, "Oh, we're too successful in America." The prosperity of America feeds quite a lot of people, not only in America but outside of America.
Here's
And if
another
you
thing
think,
that's
yeah, if you think that they're not bad people, that's a good example right there, right? These guys have so much money.
they have ridiculous amounts of money. But there is good news out there. Things are looking up in many ways. And I wanted to share this story with you because it's just doggone cool. A group of high school students volunteers to carry caskets for homeless veterans who have no family to honor them. What a great group of guys. I mean, who the heck are these guys and who are their parents? Because they deserve a big giant attaboy. Thank you, gentlemen. We really
Exactly.
appreciate that.
Wow.
Right? That's really something. I want to share because we're getting close to closing here. I want to share a video that I cut up today. I better take this down first. It goes back to the first 100 days. And before we get there, let's not forget Canada just had an election. The election came down to there was somebody who was very conservative, and then there was someone that was very lefty. The conservative person could not lose. He was 100% absolutely positively going to win this thing by a landslide. And then he started slamming Trump. And the more he slammed Trump, the more his numbers went down. Because guess who was going to vote for him? It was the younger people. The older people, and I've got a graph too. I should probably pull that up too before we get too far away. But the older people, they didn't like Trump.
How sad is it that you voted for somebody in your country because they
Someone
told you
else.
that they don't like the president in another country? Is that crazy? I mean,
Crazy is a
what
word.
kind of crazy world are we living in? Imagine America voting for a candidate because they don't like the president of Italy.
So here's the graph.
Does that make sense? Doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me.
So 60 and over, there's dealing with Donald Trump was their most important thing. Of all the things, that's the most important thing that they wanted to. And so that's where this guy decided he was going to start going after and taking on Trump. The problem was all of the other issues too that were important to people, 30 to 44. reducing the cost of living, making housing more affordable, growing the economy, making Canada a better place to live. All of these things that are important to the younger age groups. And they end up taking out the guy that actually, if he hadn't switched and thought that, for political expediency, he was going to go after Trump. If he hadn't done that, he would have won. Now they got a guy who is absolutely 100% hell-bent on the Green New Deal. He is going to make zero emissions in Canada. And what that's going to do, all of these things that are important to the younger groups, the 44 and younger, actually the 59 and younger, all of those people that think that the things that are important, most important to them, they're going to lose because they picked a guy that was much more, loving of Trump or hating of Trump. Sorry, the worst of the two. It just, you're right. Why do you care what the guy in the other country believes?
And this is what people are manipulated. I mean, this guy, I watched his speech, and I think he said like 3 or 4 things, like, "Oh, I'm a British guy first. I'm from Europe, and not, hey, I'm a great Canadian citizen and I'm here to represent Canada." No, this guy's talking about how he believes in this whole Green New Deal, and he is from Europe. He's a European guy. So if I'm Canadian, I would be very upset. I would have been like, this is the guy I voted for.
Here's another thing. This is Miami, Florida, one of the largest Republican-led cities in the country, and these are Islamic mosques all over Miami. Look at them.
Yeah, and you know what that is, John? That, to your point about Republican, these are the I'm sorry to say, because this is Florida, the majority of Florida, right? You have a lot of boomers, right? And they're very anti-Trump because the media tells them to. Look what's going on in their backyard. Are they focused on that? They're not. They probably have the same TDS. And because they have been so blindsided, they're not seeing what's going on in their backyard. That's pathetic.
So there's nothing that you can say that, keeps somebody from having a mosque in a city. They can be approved or disapproved. I think it was in very bad taste that they put a mosque in the shadow of the World Trade Center. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is that they're incorporating Sharia law in these areas.
Yes.
That is repugnant to our Constitution. It cannot stand. These people are so afraid to go in there and say, you cannot do that here. That is 100% against our Constitution and our way of living. They're afraid to do it because they don't want to be called a bigot. Well, guess what?
But if you go to these cities, especially this Republican area, I guarantee you a lot of the city officials, they're boomers. They're collecting a paycheck. They're worried. They're anti-Trump because the media told them
easy on the boomer cap. You can't be going after all of us boomers now.
It's Florida. Come on.
But you have to understand there's a lot of boomers that are very traditionalists. We don't want that any more than the next guy does.
But they are not involved. So if they were truly caring about their way of life, would they have allowed all these things to happen? Would they allow Sharia law like in New York where you have Sharia patrols? What is that?
Again, you've got to look at who is actually in charge. Do you think that it's all boomers that are in charge? It's not.
No. But I'm saying you'll have if you go to look at Stevensville, go look at the city council, and you'll see the demographics. There's a young guy, and then the rest are above 70. That's just the reality. I'm just giving you
not above 70, but certainly above 50.
Right? Because this is what our culture, our deterioration of our culture is. Don't get involved. And so people don't get involved. People don't participate. I'm a first generation immigrant American citizen. I get involved. I told you earlier, we need to get involved. It's our civic duty. If you don't like things that are happening in your city, get involved. Don't wait for somebody else to do it for you. Find out about it. Read a book. Go to the library. Find out how you can run for office and serve. So what if you only serve one term? You might be the difference that city needs for it to thrive.
Well, look, you certainly don't have a right to complain if you're not willing to stand up and do something yourself. So,
Yeah.
we're gonna cut out here in just a minute. I've got this one as a wrap up to the first 100 days, and we're gonna go back the way we started and talk about or let Gutfield kind of take us out. You can't tell me that video didn't save. Come on now, the video didn't save. I'm gonna kill it.
Well, and he's hilarious. If you want to watch a fun show, I think it's fun.
Well, that really blows. Sorry, it was really funny. Just trust me when I tell you that it was funny. And I laughed a lot, and you guys would have laughed too. I know you would have, but it was funny. And
Freedom would have thought it was funny.
I thought it was funny. So that's all that matters. I said it was funny, and so that's all that matters. Hey, on our Sunday show, David's going to be back, and we're going to go into some things. Oh, there you go. Now this, I wouldn't mess with Roger, just so you know. I wouldn't mess with Roger. I'm just telling you, Al. I know the man personally.
I'm not messing with Roger. I'm messing with those guys in Florida. Those are the folks that
you came after us boomers twice today, and that's
look.
Me and
President
Roger.
Trump.
Me and Roger, we have long memories.
But President Trump is not your typical 40-year politician. He's been talking about getting into politics for 40 years because he didn't agree with how the country was being run. As an outsider, he came in and he learned from his mistakes in his first 4 years. And I can guarantee you 2.0, he's doing the right things. The people around him, if you watch that cabinet meeting, these are people that care about this country. And you haven't seen that. I didn't see it during Bush Jr.'s 8 years. I didn't see it during Bush Sr.'s 4 years. I haven't seen anything like this since Ronald Reagan, and he was criticized every day. So there's been both Republican and Democrat presidents. A lot of them just went in there to fatten their pockets, and people said, well, that's just the way it is. I disagree.
We can talk about Dick Cheney, and we will. We do have an upcoming expose on who Dick Cheney is and what he got out of the war on terror. But for now, we're not going to go there. On Sunday's show, we're going to talk about a prominent member of the Clinton era, someone who was deeply involved from the very beginning of Bill Clinton's presidency all the way through to today. She's still a close confidant and member of that whole Clinton cabal, if you will. We're also going to have a little conversation about our good friend Barack Obama and what's happening over there. There's some interesting messaging going on there. There's also going to be an update to the bingo cards, so we may want to get those ready. I've had some information that we either have several more pending arrests or there may be some arrests between now and Sunday, so keep those bingo cards handy. Will, I don't think you have a bingo card, so you're going to have to text me. I know you have my phone number. Text me your email address and I'll get you a bingo card. You'll want it. It's fun. Anyway, so that's one of the things we're going to be talking about on Sunday's show. Like I said, Dave will be back, and whatever breaking news happens between now and then, you know that we'll be on it and we'll tell you the stories behind the stories. Anything else for the good of the order there, Bill?
No, thank you. Sorry I was a little bit late, but fantastic to participate in this show. And to our audience, thank you for allowing us to, come to your ear and hear our take. Very interesting times we're living in. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else except here in the good old US of A.
You know what? I'm sorry. I have one more quick update. I have one more quick update on a story. I almost missed this one. And this one is actually pretty good. Do you remember we talked about Desert Storm? And I'm talking about Desert Storm, the boat race in Lake Havasu. And we showed you the video of that boat that was flipping and all of that. I have to come back and just give you an update. It's a 2-minute update. It's pretty spectacular. So let me just bring this up real quick. Sorry about that.
The update is good, right?
Oh, it's amazing.
Okay,
It's
good.
truly amazing. Okay, let me get rid of.
That looks like fiberglass shredded.
Pretty much. I just have to get here. Okay, here you go.
Wow.
What's up, guys? Ryan Freedom One here. Give you our last update down in Havasu, Desert Storm. Got the boat dragged back on the trailer after our incident yesterday. She was definitely on a pass. Just got a lot of people to thank. Start with the Kiwanis Club and the Desert Storm Charity. So we donated our winnings back to the Desert Storm Charity, and between that and the money we raised for the Kiwanis Club, it was almost $20,000 we're giving to charity this weekend. So that's our biggest goal, is raising money for charity, and we were really happy to reach that kind of number. So also want to give a shout out to the fire department, the sheriff, the dive team, and the Desert Storm crew for acting quickly. We heard that they had divers in the water within 20 seconds on the boat, so got our drivers out safely. We really appreciate that. Can't thank those guys enough. Definitely want to thank the guys at Absolute Speed and Marine for basically taking us in this week. We never met them before this, and basically we got some new family down here at Lake Havasu with these guys. They are just amazing people. Lend a hand anytime we needed it, helped out the whole week, and we appreciate that a lot. When we get back, we'll kind of go over a game plan and, get something put together moving forward. And we'll obviously keep you guys in the loop and let you know what's going on. But we got a little cardinals to work through. And the bottom line is we still won the race, even though it was upside down and backwards. But we can't be happier with the outcome. I mean, we started doing what we set out to do. So stay tuned.
Oh my God.
Okay, so first of all, what a great.
There you go.
What a great song. What a great song they used for that, by the way, but how cool of these guys. They destroyed an $800,000 boat. They won $20,000 and they donated the whole thing to charity. What a great group of guys. I'm a huge fan of theirs now. That boat racing thing is pretty amazing. It always takes quite the mettle to get in, strap yourself into something like that.
Yes.
What happened to them doesn't happen very often, but it's always a possibility. And thank God these guys walked away, and they're bruised. They're probably really sore still. The boat is destroyed, but I'm just, honestly, it gave me chills when they said that they donated all their winnings to charity. That's just super cool. Good guys. Good on you. Thanks for doing that, guys.
Yeah. And they won the race. That's incredible.
That did.
Post finish line.
200.1 miles per hour, although the top end, so that was when they went through, the top end actually had them at 218. So
that's on a boat.
It's crazy. So anyway, I just wanted to bring you guys that update because I thought it was very special, and I hope you did too. You guys have a fantastic rest of your week. Stay safe, be good, and we will see you guys on Sunday. Thanks for being here at Just
What will we do with this moment? How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing.
Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
The people dreamed this country, and it's the people who are making America great again.
Making rock and roll.